To be here for any of us is to be overwhelmed and humbled by the scale of geologic time. The minutes, hours, and days by which we measure our lives are hardly an instant in the life of these canyons. In this moment, we face a choice. We face a choice that could profoundly affect the Grand Canyon in ways that we do not yet understand. Time and again, the tribal communities who inhabited this land, people like John Wesley Powell, Theodore Roosevelt, and Stephen Mather, helped us choose the protection of the ancient over the pressures of the now.
In 2012, Secretary of the Interior Ken Salazar temporarily banned new uranium mines on 1 million acres of land around the Grand Canyon. The 20-year ban gives researchers time to unravel the complexities of this rugged landscape and determine if uranium mining is safe for the canyon's precious water. Without this temporary ban, new mines could go forward on the gamble that they would not cause irreversible damage.
My first visit to the Grand Canyon was over 50 years ago, and I've been studying Grand Canyon springs now for about 35 years. The springs come out at certain spots in the Grand Canyon in the geologic layers. The main springs come from a formation called the Red Wall Limestone. Sometimes that's called the R aquifer, and so the springs emerge in this region throughout the canyon, and they sustain a lot of life, and they're very, very beautiful. There are a lot of questions that we have with this type of mining in this environment in particular, because the hydrology is through fractured rock, and the flow through fractured rock can go in many different directions. Anyone, including the mining companies who claim they know the hydrology below the mines, really don't know what they're talking about.
To the Havasupai, water is very important because Havasupai means people of the blue-green water. We emulate the water that flows in our canyon. The Supai people, we live in a very remote canyon of the Grand Canyon, and we have about approximately 150 families that live down there. We're one of the smallest tribes in Arizona. You know, we're basically fighting for our existence and our lifestyle. When we have our Red Butte gathering, it's like us coming home, back to our original territories. You know, this is where our original homes were.
This is the area that our ancestors roamed and hunted and gathered. It is our place of emergence, the birth of our people. We consider it very sacred. Our people, the Havasu Baja, it's not the first time that we've been out here gathered to protest against the uranium mining. It started back in the 80s. We learned that the water can be contaminated once they start digging for the ore, and it could affect our water source that reaches our village. So that's when we started to protest against the uranium mining. Once we were shown a map, and it was just dotted with yellow spots, which was for mining claims, and it's dotted all over this area right here. When I think about that and how, if the water is contaminated, how it'll affect our people, it just makes me sad to see these companies try and continue on digging the uranium.
The Canyon Mine sits on top of one of the largest groundwater aquifers in the Southwest. And that groundwater aquifer is called the Red Wall Moab Aquifer. It drains out to Havasu Creek. And Havasu Creek flows right through Supai Village and creates these beautiful waterfalls where a lot of people come and visit us to swim in the waterfalls. And we fear that since Canyon Mine and other mines, potential mines, are going to be right on top of the Red Wall Moab Aquifer, there's a very strong potential that we're going to have water contamination.
When the moratorium went in on mining, several mines that were in operation before the moratorium were allowed to continue. These were only a handful of mines, but some of these have had problems. Pine Nut Mine with flooding of its central chamber, and now Canyon Uranium Mine.
In 2016, miners at Canyon Uranium Mine hit groundwater, which flooded the central shaft. When the mine operator began pumping the water out, it became clear that the wastewater evaporation pond could not hold it all, so the company resorted to misting the water into the air. Water that comes in contact with disturbed uranium ore has the potential to carry that radioactive material to the precious groundwater aquifers that feed the seeps and springs of the Grand Canyon.
Back in 1992, my research group was the very first one to find high uranium in the springs below one of these uranium mines. The uranium mine was a lost orphan uranium mine. It operated from about 1948 to 1970, right on the rim of the Grand Canyon, about maybe a mile from the South Rim village. There is a strong possibility that some of the uranium that reached the spring thousands of feet below the mine originated from the mine works.
You can't talk about uranium mining in this part of the Colorado Plateau without talking about who takes the benefit and who takes the risks. The benefit is clearly defined by those multinational mining interests who have mineral leases and right to take out. Who takes the risks? The risks are very clearly borne by those who live here. The moratorium on uranium mines was really important to a broad coalition of people, very different backgrounds, rural, tribal, indigenous, sportsmen who came together to understand that this is in the best interests of this region.
That claim that there's no effect of uranium mining in the Grand Canyon really has not been proved. We may not find out what happens for a decade or two. Groundwater doesn't travel as fast as some people think. It could be anywhere from hours to sometimes thousands of years before water that falls as rainfall emerges from out of the ground. Essentially, we're gambling. We're gambling on the idea that there's no risk, when in fact that has not been shown.
The moratorium was a small victory for the tribe. The United States finally heard our voice and finally decided to protect federal lands from mining. But now it's being challenged by mining corporations. They're really upset that, the Obama administration finally listened to Native people.
Mining does not drive our economy here. Access to public lands, national park system, our visitation, hunting, sportsmen, angling, that's what is our important economic driver here. Coconino County unanimously adopted and passed a resolution supporting the moratorium, and that is a position that this county has been very clear on across all districts, across all county supervisors here.
We are right in the front lines of water contamination, which is very scary for our small tribe. You can't go back and clean water once it's contaminated. You can't consume it, you can't live with it, you can't even live among it. And that's what we fear, basically for our lives.